Hi everyone, my name is Siddharth Ravi, partner at MSI Auditors. Today, we will be discussing the recent update in the economic substance regulations. Before we move ahead, if you like our content, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel. The old ESR law is now replaced by the new Cabinet of Ministry Resolution number 57 of 2020. This new resolution is now effective retrospectively from 1st January 2019. There have been many critical changes in the new economic substance regulations. This may impact many businesses in UAE and their applicability to the economic substance regulation. The first immediate change is that the notifications will have to be resubmitted. All the licensees and exempted licensees that have already submitted their notification to the regulatory authority will have to now resubmit their notification to the Ministry of Finance on their portal once it is available. A major change in the new law is exempted licensees. The law has clearly defined entities that are exempted from meeting the economic substance test. However, they still need to submit a notification along with supports to prove that they are an exempted licensee. An exempted licensee includes any of the following that is registered in the UAE and conducts a relevant activity. An investment fund, which is different from an investment fund management business. Entity with tax jurisdiction in another country and is subject to corporate tax on all of its income. An entity wholly owned by residents, which means UAE citizens or individuals holding a UAE residency permit, and that are not part of an MNE Group, and business activities are only carried out in the UAE. Branches of a foreign entity whose relevant income is subject to tax in the jurisdiction outside UAE, or even any other licensee as per the decision of Ministry of Finance. There is no longer any mention of a federal government, government of any emirate, government body or authority, or any of them having 51% direct or indirect ownership being exempt from the ESR regulations. The new law has brought some more clarity on what a connected person means. A connected person is a licensee or an exempted licensee that falls under the same group. Now the question is, what does a group mean? A group is when there are two or more entities that are related through ownership or control such that they would have to prepare consolidated financial statements as per the related accounting standards. Now let's get into the definition of a new term, MNE Group. An MNE Group means any group that has two or more entities that have a tax residence in two different jurisdictions, or any entity that is resident for tax purposes in one jurisdiction but has a branch or a permanent establishment that carries out activities and is subject to tax in other jurisdictions. The law has brought some more clarity on how branch companies are treated in the economic substance regulations. A branch company is treated as the same legal entity as the parent company or the head office. So this means that a UAE branch of a UAE company should submit only one ESR notification and ESR report if applicable along with its parent or head office. A UAE branch of a foreign company does not report for ESR as long as the relevant income is subject to tax in the jurisdiction outside UAE and thus will be treated as an exempted licensee. The definition of a licensee has been updated as well. A licensee is any of the following two entities which are registered in the UAE, including a free zone or a financial free zone, a juridical person, and unincorporated partnerships. Natural persons, sole proprietors, trusts, and foundations are no longer considered as licensees. Another major change is the definition of a distribution service center business. This will impact many businesses in the UAE. This is now defined as a center that does either of the following: purchasing from a foreign connected person, component parts or material of goods or goods ready for sale and reselling such component parts or materials of goods, or providing services to foreign connected persons. So what this basically means is that it is no longer necessary for a business to import goods to the UAE to fall under the category of a distribution business. Also, it is no longer necessary for a foreign connected person to be conducting business outside UAE to meet the requirement of a service center business. The narrow definition of a high-risk IP business has been slightly altered as well. It is now defined as a licensee that carries out an IP business and the licensee did not create the intellectual property in the intellectual property asset which it holds for the purpose of its business, acquired the intellectual property asset either from a connected person or in consideration for funding, research and development by another person situated in a country other than the state, and licenses or has sold intellectual property asset to one or more connected persons or otherwise earns separately identifiable income from a foreign connected person in respect to this intellectual property asset. The Federal Tax Authority has now been appointed as the National Assessing Authority for the Economic Substance Regulations. The FTA now has the following responsibilities: undertake assessments to determine whether the license or an exempted licensee has met the economic substance test, impose administrative penalties, hear and decide on appeals, carry out reporting requirements, exercise any other powers or functions as required to implement the Cabinet of Ministers Resolution No. 57 of 2020, and exercise any other powers or functions as may be required to implement any decisions of the competent authority or the Minister of Finance. One of the requirements of an economic substance test is that it should be directed and managed in the UAE, which means that the managers, board of directors or other equivalent members must be present in the UAE when the decisions are being taken. It is not required for them to be residents of UAE. Another change in the new law is that licenses are allowed to now outsource activities which are not core income generating activities, like back office work, IT, legal services and other specialist services outside UAE. Hope this video was useful for you in understanding the updates in the new economic substance regulations. Thank you all for listening.